seated. Thank you, Bev. Good morning, everyone. This is the moment that I think that each and every one of us should recognize that we can only live life moment by moment. And yet many times we mortgage the future by placing liens upon it from yesterday. Whatever has transpired yesterday, if we could recognize that this moment is fresh and alive, and that where we go from here depends solely upon our own awareness, what we can image and feel in our consciousness. If this is the moment, let this be the moment that we give birth to newness in life. If this is the moment, then let this be the moment that we close the doors to any difficulties that we may have had that still plague us. If this is the moment, then let's open the door to greater health and greater happiness, shall we? All right, then let's recognize that yesterday ended last night. It ended last night, and this moment is fresh and alive. I asked the congregation at the first service to use the term with me, that if it is to be, it's up to me. Let's say that together. If it is to be, it's up to me. Let me hear it again. Doesn't that sound good? So therefore, your happiness, your future, your life in years to come, days to come, are not dependent upon the experiences in your life. They're not dependent upon people in your life. This is the moment that we take command. This is the moment that we take ownership. This is the moment that we begin a new beginning in our experience and our expressions in life. So this is where we pack away and close the doors of consciousness and come into that new awareness of life itself. You know, a plane that's at the airport, we have to catch a plane immediately. I won't be singing Let There Be Peace on Earth with you. Because my plane leaves an hour after church. So you treat for me that they'll be there. Speaking of a plane, this morning, Norma brought us to, one of our members drove by and picked us up and brought us here. And when we had all of our luggage in her trunk and everything, and Nita was locking up the back door and everything, and just before I was ready to slam the trunk, I saw a little tail, our cat, in the trunk. She says, if it is to be, I'm going with thee. But it's interesting. I said, thank God we discovered her there, not at the airport. You know? But now there, what did she pick up? She picked up the fact that there's change. Can I have you pick up this morning that your life is changing for the better? It doesn't have to be the next day the very same. So when we're at an airport, listen to me, when you're at a plane, the greatest thrust that a plane has, it's when it's taking off. And why? Because the plane has to break the law of gravity. It has to break that law of gravity in order for it to thrust itself up into and become airborne. I would love us to find out what's holding me down. What's holding me back? What's preventing me from being what I want to be, doing what I want to do, expressing what I'd like to express? And just hoping and thinking occasionally a positive thought is not enough. It takes the strength, the courage, the guts, the awareness, the imagination, the vision to break the hold that fear may have, to break the hold that the past may have. So we break through that consciousness. That's what I'd love us to do here today, to break through a pattern. And when we break through that pattern, we use the imagination. When we move it from perhaps failure or regret or resentment, whatever it might be, and we come into that conscious awareness of the beauty of life itself. We may say, what do I do with certain things in my life? You know, that seat reminds me, remember sometimes years ago when you were in school and the teacher says, go sit in the corner. Now you go sit right there in the corner. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could take here today that whatever you came in here on your back, that you say, go up there. Why can't it be done? Where are you carrying your problem? In your mind's eye. Where are you carrying the situation that weighs you down? Where? In your mind's eye. It's in your imagination. You might say, now wait a while. This is not in my imagination. When I leave here today, you don't know what I have at home, but what you build up that you have at home. You could use it positively or constructively. It says so beautiful in the scriptures. Are we not in the image and likeness of God? Yes or no? All right. Then what we image, long enough, strong enough, we take on that likeness. So if we could take here today a freeing power that we're no longer under the sentence. We're no longer sentencing ourselves for something that may restrict us. This is the glory of the truth that sets us free. This is the realization where we say, all right, then I will use the consciousness that the Spirit gave me, and I will image myself being totally free. But use it, not in a term of fantasy. Use it not in a make-believe. Use your imagination, because that's your mind's eye. We have a choice. We could image ourselves failing. We could image ourselves being restricted. We could image ourselves being confined to areas that cause us pain. Or we could image ourselves in a whole new level of consciousness. And what it takes is to break that consciousness and enter into a new dimension. Join with me this morning. Come up with me into a higher elevation. We're going into a new dimension. And this is where Jesus, the teacher, was endeavoring to. He says, if I be lifted up, I will draw. So when we break the dimension of three-dimensional living, and we enter into that new consciousness. Now you might say, am I not pretending that I don't have a problem? No, we don't teach that in Science of Mind. Are you not asking me to make believe that that situation doesn't await me tomorrow? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying greet it, but greet it in a new dimension of consciousness. It's never the problem. It's how we greet it. It's how we handle it emotionally. It's how we address it. And when we address it differently and we handle it differently, then we are using the new dimension. And this is where Jesus, the teacher, was endeavoring to. He says, if I be lifted up, I will draw. So when we break the dimension of three-dimensional living, and we enter into that new consciousness. Now you might say, am I not pretending that I don't have a problem? No, we don't teach that in Science of Mind. Are you not asking me to make believe that that situation doesn't await me tomorrow? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying greet it, but greet it in a new dimension of consciousness. It's never the problem. It's how we greet it. It's how we handle it emotionally. It's how we address it. And when we address it differently and we handle it differently, then we are using the imagination creatively. Or we could use the imagination destructively. And so we get into that conscious in your mind's eye. This is where we begin to see the solution. And it isn't fantasy. And sometimes, some of us, we have a problem and we magnify it. We have a situation and we blow it way out of proportion. This is it. How many times have people, don't show your hand, but how many times have people say, this is it. I know this is it. This has wiped me out completely. I'll never come through this. And we did. We've made it. We're still breathing, right? And you might say, that's just about it. Just breathing. Just existing. If we are in truth, we are not to just exist. We are to experience this thing called life. Anything could exist. But when we come to that consciousness, we want to experience the joy, experience the beauty, experience the love, experience health, experience abundance. But again, we harness the imagination. We harness it. And you harness it and you direct it. And when you harness it and direct it that way, then you're using that creative power. You're using that consciousness. That's why Jesus said, it is done unto you as you believe. But when we allow it to move in every direction, totally uncontrolled, we live in a world of fantasy. I'm reminded of the teacher. I shared this with the people at the first service. The students just came back from spring break. And the teacher said, well, I don't want to ask the whole class, what did you do at spring break? So the teacher said, well, I'll ask little Billy. Billy, you come up here and tell the class what you did during spring break. How did you spend spring break? Well, Billy came up and he said, he went fishing with his father at the lake. And he said, and would you believe it, Billy said, that they caught 12 catfish, 75 pounds and more, each catfish. And the whole class says, wow, 75, maybe even 100 pounds the catfish may have been. I don't know, but it was something like that. His imagination was getting bigger. So the teacher didn't want to say, you're live, you're stretching. She told him, you're up here. And he says, yeah. He says, they were so big. He says, it almost sunk the boat. So she says, thank you. And he sat down. She said, I've got to teach him a lesson. I've got to let him I got to show him in the class how you let your things go out of proportion and there's no truth to it. She said, well, I was at that same lake. And she said, and as I was walking, she says, at that same lake, she says, this huge grizzly bear came out of the woods. It must have weighed 500 pounds. And she says, the grizzly bear was running right to me, ready to attack me. And she said, this little yellow dog, tiny little yellow dog, she said, just jumped out, she says, and bit that bear's nose. And then took that bear and swung it around, and threw that bear right on the other side of the lake. She says, what do you think about that, Billy? He says, I know. He says, that was my little yellow dog. Where do we stop? And you see how something just gets way out of hand? And sometimes we may say, my life's out of control. Many times I have people say, my life's out of control. I have people say, I'm not even the orchestration of my life. And your life has to be in command. And we need to take that realization of that consciousness. God gave us a magnificent mind, but a mind not to be a duplicator, and a mind to be originator. That's what your mind is. The mind that originates ideas. We look at our lives, and some of us may find that we have areas that we wouldn't want to relive again, and that's okay. And we have experiences in our life that may have been very restricting, and that's okay. But I believe that we have within us here today the ability, every single one of us here, to redirect our lives. And that whatever we have gone through, we ought to look at it as something that perhaps we were the cause of it, or maybe we weren't of the cause of it, but we've grown through it. But we should never become discouraged. We should never allow ourselves to get down into the depths of despair. If we live in a cave-like thinking, that's all we know is the darkness. But here we are, there's beautiful teachings of truth to let our light shine and to come through. You take a snake, has to shed its skin in order for it to survive. I'm asking you here today to shed whatever needs to be from your experience. And don't say it's easier said than done, because it's all consciousness. Remember, thought erases thought. Belief replaces belief. And it begins in us. And when we begin to come into that consciousness, we know that there's areas of our lives that we have to find what we need to do. I'm reminded of a story that I read, which is an excellent story about Anwar Sadat. That story. When this man was young, he grew up, he was nurtured with hatred toward the Israelis. He grew up with not only the hate, but a destructive pattern toward them. And there was no acceptance to him, but he was programmed. And that was the script that he had accepted. That was his script. That was the level. That's all he knew. That's what was given to him. And when he was growing up, he became a rebel. And he remembers making a statement before a mob of people. And because he was the leader of this rebel group, and he said, as long as I am alive, I will never shake the hand of an Israeli as long as they are on Arab soil. And he said, never, never, never. And the mob replied, never, never, never. And that mob consciousness became greater. And he realized he was using that power. Well, later on, he became arrested. And he spent time in cell 54. He writes this about his autobiography. And he's in cell 54 quite some time. And there, Anwar did some reflecting. He started to look at his life. And he started to realize what motivated him and how he was motivated by people. And he realized that the hatred that he had and the opinions that he had and the
verdicts that he had accepted were really not his own. They were really not his own. But he allowed himself to be influenced. He allowed himself to move into that level of thinking. And while in prison, he started to release some of this. He started to see himself from a different consciousness. And he found out that what the most important power that any of us could ever have, this man writes about his own life, is mastery over self. Mastery over our own fears. Mastery over our own worries. Mastery over our own warped ideas. This is what he realized. And when he came out of prison, he wanted to go back into the public office. But remember, he had all of these people that believed in this rebel. And he realized he had a script. And the script had to be changed. He had to rewrite the script. Now that's risky. That's very risky. Because here are all the people that recognize this is the script you gave us. But he had to rewrite that script. And when he was able to do that and face himself and became deeper into politics and then eventually became the president of Egypt, he realized to make a statement, never, never, never is wrong. But it takes a great person to realize to say, I was wrong. I wasn't really right. And he worked diligently to change the script in his own life. And as he changed and rewrote the script in his own life, he is credited in the world today working with the United States and other countries in the Camp David Accord for peace. I'm asking you here today that what we need to do, all of us, and myself included, is to rewrite our script. Whatever our financial picture is, whatever our health picture is, whatever our situation in life may be, we are the ones that need to rewrite that script. Otherwise, if you don't change the script, I'm going to be honest with you, it's the law of cause and effect. You don't change the script, you play the same role. The same role over and over and over again. But when we change the script and we rewrite it, then we move into a new role and our lives become transformed. So when we look at ourselves here today and realize it's not just positive thinking, we could be positive, but the script, the subjective mind within us, the pattern within us, that needs to be changed. And if that's not changed, then we move into the same role. And he's so beautiful when he said, what I need to have, that even though I may have had a loss, even though I may have had pain, even though I'm no longer the same person, I am now in a new consciousness. That's what I'm asking you to do today. I'm reminded of that years ago, I remember when I was a youngster, we lived about an hour away from Secaucus, New Jersey. But whenever we had to move in that direction, Secaucus was a very swampy land. And it wasn't too bad in the wintertime, but in the summertime, you knew 2 hours away when you were approaching Secaucus by the stench that was there. And it was a swamp. And tall grass. It would breed the biggest mosquitoes that God has ever created, bugs and everything. And it was just a terrible sore spot. But a couple of years ago when I had been back, driving towards Secaucus and beyond it, a developer with the state assistance drained the whole swamp out. Got rid of the grass, the bugs, the debris, the stench is gone. Got rid of the soil that was infected, put new topsoil, compacted it, and now today is one of the most beautiful gated communities. Now, just being positive wouldn't have been anything. It took action. It took action. Just being positive is not enough. Just living in hopes is not enough. Just using the imagination is not enough. It must be followed with action, constructive action. And when we start following our lives with constructive action, we start building, and we build a beautiful consciousness. So I'm going to say to you today, In conclusion, you have a choice. Those of you, I don't know how many of you come in Friday night. Sometimes I come in Friday night at LAX around 6 o'clock. And I think every plane in the United States is coming in at 6 o'clock at LAX. And we're in a holding pattern for about sometimes 20 minutes. That's not too bad. But some people, all their life, they're in a holding pattern. Holding, holding. One day he'll come along. One day she'll come along. One day my ship will come in. One day the door will open up. One day I'll get my demonstration. One day this and that. It's almost like that fairy tale when remember the frog was going to get kissed, but the princess was going to kiss the frog, and one day the prince will come. I mean, this is fantasy. This is the moment. This is the moment. You know, if you came in here today, God help you, if there was a tack in your chair and you sat down, you wouldn't remain seated very long, but it'd only take you a moment to say, what in Sam Hill was that, wouldn't it? You wouldn't sit there for 45 minutes and say, this tack is just killing me. I can't wait till this service is over with. Would you? Yes or no? No. You'd say, you think I'm going to sit on a tack in pain for a whole hour? No way. And yet, what are you sitting on mentally? More than an hour. Interesting, isn't it? Then the same thing. Stop holding. Just like the plane needs that thrust to take off and break the gravity, I'm asking you here today to enter a new dimension of living, a new dimension of seeing, and a new dimension of acting. If it's up to me, together, it's going to be the best day of my life. And so it is. All right, there we are.